Hussein Nabash, not only refusing to apologize for the outright overt lie, but he actually defended the lie in a very weird way. He said, well, Romney didn't win, did he? So, I mean, so in other words, the man intentionally went before the Senate and lied, and is proud of his lie because it affected the race, and that's all that mattered in the long run. Well, speaking about lying and affecting Americans in the long run, a group of Republican senators say they are aware of allegations of workplace retaliation against Homeland Security personnel who, in conflict with the administration's and immigration policies, are actually following the law and are faithfully discharging the duties of the offices in which they serve. The Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration and National Interest revealed that it is investigating the potential retaliation against Department of Homeland Security employees who have allegedly been punished for not complying with the administration's enforcement priorities by enforcing the law. The current administration, Obama, have told them to stand down and not enforce the law, and then lied to the American public about what he told them. We are aware of multiple allegations of targeting and retaliation against DHS personnel who refused to comply with the administration's willful disregard of our immigration laws, such as allegations made in lawsuits filed in federal court by a group of 10 ICE officers and agents. The Republicans noted a recent comment from President Obama in which he's indicated that immigration officers would be punished for failing to adhere to his executive amnesty, even though it is still being debated on how legal the executive amnesty is. There may be individual officials or Border Patrol who aren't paying attention to our new directives, they quoted Obama, but they're going to be answerable to the head of the Department of Homeland Security because it's been very clear what our priorities should be. If someone is working for ICE and there's a policy and they don't follow the policy, there are going to be consequences to it. So I guess, according to Obama, the policies are more important than the law. That's what it boils down to. Policies are more important than the law. If you break the law, you're not accountable for it. Look at all the people streaming across the border right now and breaking the law. But if you break a policy, you're going to be held accountable, according to Obama. Not only do the president's statements ignore the plain language of several immigration statutes that command DHS personnel to take certain actions relating to illegal aliens, the comments seem to purport with a pattern and practice of threats towards DHS personnel who seek to fulfill their duties under the law. The senators have called on Jay Johnson, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, to provide information related to the discipline of DHS employees over the past 6 years, including the authority upon which your department will rely to penalize department personnel for their failure to comply with an unlawful and unconstitutional order. After all, not only do the president's statements ignore the plain language of several immigration statutes, the comments seem to comport with a pattern and practice of threats towards DHS personnel who seek to fulfill their duties under the law. After all, Border Patrol agents who repeatedly report groups of aliens larger than 20 individuals face retribution. Management will either take them out of the field and assign them to processing detainees at the station or assign them to a fixed position in low-volume areas as punishment. Needless to say, agents got the message and now stay below this 20-person threshold, no matter the size of the actual gang. So I guess kind of like the bad guys know that you're not supposed to take out more than $5,000 in one whack at the bank, or they'll call the government. So they take out $4,999. So I guess now we're only being invaded by groups of 19 individuals at a time. I mean, and the sad thing is this. You know, we were told that with all of this new action that Obama's been taking, that the border would be more secure and that less people would be coming across. Well, folks, springtime is here, and the numbers of illegals along the border are indeed once again going up. So the numbers of people illegally crossing the border are up, and the morale of the people that are supposed to be keeping them out is going down. I mean, it's no secret that Obama's real action is he wants to do away with an international border. That's what it all boils down to. Speaking of borders, Russian geopolitical analyst Konstantin Sivkov has called for Moscow to launch a nuclear attack on Yellowstone National Park and the San Andreas fault line, noting that the devastating consequences would basically disappear the United States as a country. Why do they need to send over hundreds of nuclear missiles when 2 missiles in the right spot would do just as good a job anyway? Sivkov made the comments in a piece for Russian trade newspaper VPK News, which was then relayed through the Sydney Morning Herald, Sydney, Australia, arguing that NATO aggression against Russia required the complete destruction of the enemy. Sivkov went on to depict a chilling scenario. Just a quick by the by, of course, that NATO aggression is us responding to the Russians invading the Ukraine. So the fact that we're doing something in response to them is considered aggression. Anyway, the chilling scenario. Geologists believe that the Yellowstone supervolcano caldera could explode at any minute. You know, and this has been the subject of even shows on PBS. They've had several different shows talking about this. There are signs of growing activity there. Therefore, it suffices to push the relatively small impact of a munition megaton class to initiate an eruption. The consequences will be catastrophic for the United States. As a country, it just disappears, he said. A Yellowstone supervolcano eruption would kill millions of people in the initial blast and bury much of the United States in volcanic ash. According to some experts, it could cause the end of all life in the world because of that volcanic ash. The last time a supervolcano exploded was, ironically, in Siberia, and 85% of all land species and 95% of all ocean dwellers were completely wiped out. A lot of scientists claim this is what happened to the dinosaurs. And we've got one brewing in our own backyard. Well, in 2013, it was revealed that the magma below Yellowstone was 2.5 times larger than previously thought, and that gives the park's supervolcano the potential to cause an eruption 2,000 times more powerful than Mount St. Helens, and it is overdue. Sivkov also said that while Russia's geography protected it from the threat posed by tsunamis, one could be triggered in the United States with an attack on the San Andreas Fault. Another vulnerable area of the United States from the geophysical point of view is the San Andreas Fault, 1,300 kilometers between the Pacific and North American plates. A detonation of a nuclear weapon there can trigger catastrophic events like a coast-sized tsunami, which could completely destroy the infrastructure of the western United States. Remember Lex Luthor in the original Superman movie with Chris Reeves? That was his whole thing, was he was going to set off the San Andreas Fault and have California fall into the ocean, and he was buying up land in Nevada and Arizona so he would have oceanfront property. Well, there again, sections of the San Andreas Fault are overdue for major earthquake activity. There are 3 sections of the San Andreas Fault system in Northern California, the Hayward, Rogers Creek, and Green Valley, that are either near or past their average reoccurrence interval and have the ability to trigger earthquakes of 6.8 or greater. He claims that, fearing that the United States plans to destroy Russia, he says Moscow is in a much worse position than it was even 50 years ago because Russia has far fewer allies and cannot compete against the military might of NATO and its allies. Well, needless to say, his rhetoric illustrates how fraught tensions are between Moscow and Washington. And last month, General Bradshaw, NATO's Deputy Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, warned that the threat of conflict with Russia represents an existential threat to our whole being as a country. So, and if they were to do something like this, they could easily do this without shooting a missile. We have ways of defeating missiles, but if they could smuggle a nuclear device into this country, like across the open borders that we seem to have, at that point, all they got to do is just detonate it right there at the San Andreas Fault or detonate it in the middle of Yosemite. And how are we going to stop them? I mean, when it comes to the Border Patrol, they don't stop illegals. The only people that the Border Patrol stops is American citizens and then manhandles them for being American citizens. Meanwhile, and the funny part is that, Russia, Vladimir Putin, was having such a nice talk with Obama. Remember Obama saying, just wait till I get reelected. I'll have a much easier time doing things once I get reelected. But yet here they are going behind our backs wanting to try to destroy our country, showing you cannot trust them. At the same time, here you've got Obama bending over backwards, trying to help Iran make an atomic bomb, trying to get them to be able to get nuclear material. And forget whether or not they're going to try to use that nuclear bomb on Israel. On March 19th, one of the Iranian imams endorsed the idea that an electromagnetic pulse blast over the central U.S. could be used to cripple the United States and wipe out a lot of the electronics in the United States, thus reducing our ability to exist as a country. So there again, I just flat do not understand how Obama cavorts with the enemy and shuts our allies off. Everybody knows about how he's been behaving towards Israel. They just had the new head of NATO request a meeting with Obama while he was in the country, and Obama refused to see him, the head of NATO. When we're having such problems with the Ukraine and with other areas, with Russia being as provocative as they possibly can, flying clandestine missions up in the Baltic area, forcing Sweden and Denmark to further protect their borders. But yet Obama doesn't have time for NATO. But somehow he always seems to have time for Al Sharpton. I mean, on Thursday, the press announced that the Obama administration would fully consider abandoning Israel in international bodies like the United Nations. President Obama finally called Netanyahu to congratulate him, if you can call it congratulations, because he actually delivered a lecture to Netanyahu telling him that he still needs to surrender Palestinian land. And it always catches people by surprise, it seems, in the media and in Congress, that Obama keeps turning the screws on Israel. But the thing of it is Obama's been against Israel his entire career. Ever since he was a senator, he's been against Israel. Every time he's turned around, he's been not anti-Netanyahu, he's been anti-Israel. So would President Obama really sign a UN resolution calling for the establishment of a Palestinian state? In a heartbeat, he would do it. Well, Senator John McCain said, of course, he shouldn't be considering it. And if he does, and if it was approved by the UN, which, of course, the UN being anti-Semite like they are, they would do it in a heartbeat, then the United States Congress would have to examine our funding of the United Nations. Well, we've said on this show time and time again that the United Nations is doing absolutely nothing for the United States. So why are we supporting it with 25% of the money that they use against the United States? I mean, even when it came to doing something for themselves, like Ebola, we still had to come to their rescue because they couldn't get the job done. We need to get out of the UN, and the sooner the better. Well, that's another day of Cowboy Up with Tex. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, have a good day.